I want to talk about the novel Gone with Occasional Music by Jonathan Latham. There are two main concepts that the book deals with that I think are worth discussing. The first one is government surveillance and power abuse, and how people in the 80s and 90s were scared of what will become of the future because of the control that government has. This book takes place in a futuristic world, so by discussing and analyzing the higher authority government group in the book, we can kind of get an idea of what people at the time thought about the government and the issue over power abuse. The second thing that I want to talk about is learning how to accept who you are and finding a place where you belong. The main character, Conrad Metcalf, doesn't fit into this world. He knows it, and pretty much everyone around him knows it as well. At the beginning of the novel, he acknowledges this, but it seems like he never really accepts it. He tries to make a space for himself, but at the end, he learns that he shouldn't be spending his time doing this, and he should just be looking for a place where he does fit in. So, let's talk about government power first. The novel was written in the early 90s, and during this time, technology was becoming more widely available and used. People started using cell phones and having TVs and computers at home. I think I was born in the early 2000s, so I don't know what I know about the 90s or 80s. The story itself takes place in a futuristic time around the 2020s or even further into the future, where there are evolved animals and babies that talk and walk like humans. So, normal stuff. Anyways, I feel like during like the 80s and 90s, people were like scared of technology. I know the Y2K scare was a big thing during this time. If you don't know what that is, it's pretty much a ton of programs were created in the 80s and 90s that didn't take account the formatting changing in the year. So pretty much we were going from the 1900s to 2000s, and computer programs couldn't do that. So there was a lot of fear that these programs were going to crash and destroy a lot of stuff. I know this was a big issue for banks and stuff like that, because if banks go down, then, everyone loses their money. Some people kind of took this idea and morphed it into this weird, like, end of the world kind of theory, but yeah, no, it's just about computer programs. I definitely recommend looking more into it. I think it's super interesting. So I feel like a lot of people just didn't understand technology at the time, and they were scared of how it's gonna shape the world, especially how government and higher up authority might abuse technology to control people. And this story goes over those fears. In the story, everyone has a card that stores karma points. If you have a high amount of karma points, it means that you're a good person and you don't really do anything bad. If you have a super low amount, it means you're not a good person and you've done a lot bad. And if you run out of points, you're sent to a freezer. So pretty much you're just frozen for a period of time. And if they remember that you're in there, they'll take you out. If not, you're just kind of stuck there. There are also people called inquisitors who work for the office. Inquisitors are like police officers in real life, and the office is like the government. So inquisitors go around watching people and are the ones who hand out and take away karma. It's also mentioned in the story that inquisitors have a quota of karma points exchanged to meet each day. So it seems like they're doing their job similar to what police officers kind of have to do when they have to write tickets in real life. So there's that going on. So all this karma stuff is kind of subjective. There isn't really rules to tell you what will cause you to lose points or what will cause you to gain points. It's all based on kind of what the Inquisitor feels like doing at that time. So a lot of times in this world, you're just kind of tiptoeing around everyone, making sure you don't step on anyone's toes pretty much. The only reason you're not doing anything bad is not based on your morals, but just based on the fact that there's someone always watching you. If you bump into an inquisitor from a completely different area, they know everything about you just based on your points. This one little parameter in life determines everything. So this is an example of government surveillance. Everyone's watching you. You can't do anything bad or anything, which I guess is good, but you kind of lose your freedom with that. This also shows the fear that the government creates within people, and it makes people more easily controllable. Other way that the office has power over people is through the news. All the news are either in a form of music or images. So in newspapers, there's no words at all, it's just photos. Without any context to these images, they are easily manipulated into whatever the office wants it to be. Metcalf states a murder was whatever the inquisitor's office wanted to be. Meaning that if someone gets killed, the office can influence whether or not it's shown in the newspaper. They can influence whether or not you think it's a good thing that it happened or a bad thing that it happens. It strips away your ability to think, pretty much. It strips away your ability to discuss, pretty much. You can't think about whether or not this action was a good thing or a bad thing or anything like that. The office hands you a picture and that's it. In a scene where Metcalf is looking through the newspapers, the photos of a murder victim is shown. Everyone has access to this photo. Anyone can flip to it and see it. And I feel like it's a way to desensitize people to violence. I feel like in real life, people back in the day were probably scared of this happening. Everyone had TVs and computers at home, and it just became normal to have them, and you had more access to violent movies and shows. People were getting used to seeing very disturbing actions, and this just got much more worse over time. Anyone can find a beheading video or videos of people getting beat up on Reddit in like 2 seconds. People had these fears, but a lot of this violence was going on at the time. The 80s and 90s were hit with a huge wave of crime. There's a ton of reasons to explain this, but one big one was the drug epidemic that was happening. In the 90s, there was a journalist who wrote an article about how the CIA was the cause of the crack cocaine epidemic in Los Angeles, especially in southern Los Angeles, where there was a large amount of minorities. The reason why the CIA was spreading drugs around in this area was to go up against a drug dealer from a different country. By spreading drugs, this just increased violence because many gangs became involved with selling drugs, and there's a lot of tension with opposing groups. People were faced with dangerous individuals all the time, keeping them on edge and not promoting a safe environment. In the story, the office is the one providing drugs to everyone. Most everyone participates in snorting drugs, or in the book, they call drugs make. There are stores literally everywhere that you can get custom make from. Everyone is completely hooked on this thing. Here's a quote from the story that I think pretty much sums everything up. Make is a tool for controlling great masses of people. It homogenizes their responses to repression. I literally can't phrase it any better. The government just wants a easier time controlling people, and drugs was the best way to go about it, I guess. The office is slowly gaining complete control of everyone, and it shows near the end of the story that they were pretty much able to do that. At the end of the novel, there was no more custom drug or custom make. Everyone was taking the same kind, which makes you completely forget who you are and what you do for a living. You're pretty much a zombie. Since everyone was already hooked on their custom drug, they had no choice but to use this new form that destroys their brain. There was a fight scene that got pretty violent between Metcalf and this evolved baby. And the nanny of the baby was just watching calmly and didn't look super concerned about the whole thing. She literally could not comprehend what was happening in front of her. This takes me back to my original point of being desensitized to violence. The government is trying to make us used to violent acts for whatever reason, and they do this by showing it in the media and by also making us destroy our brain and making us dumb. There's definitely a correlation going on with the real world in the book, and I hope I made myself clear. And if I haven't, please let me know so I can try to explain myself better. So I feel like people were scared that the government was gonna control us through drugs and through fear and trying to make us used to seeing so much violence so that in the future, when there is a ton of violence, we're okay with it. Now I'm gonna be moving on to the other main thing I wanted to talk about. So Metcalf is a man that 100% does not fit into this world. He is trying to find the truth and trying to provide justice, but the office doesn't allow him to do that. Metcalf really embraces that he doesn't fit in. He's willing to break these social rules just to get his job done. He loses a ton of karma points in the story to the point where he was sent to the freezer twice. He describes himself as rudeness incarnated, but to me, I feel like he doesn't really sees himself as that. He tries to accept how other people see him as, but he isn't really this big tough guy. He has this one big insecurity regarding his sexuality that he tries to hide. So in this futuristic world, there's this experiment that you can do where you change the nerve endings of your genitals with someone of the opposite sex. So if you're a cis man, your wee-wee will feel like a vagina, and the opposite for a cis woman. Metcalf did this experiment with ex-partner, but before they can switch their nerve endings back, she just ran away and he hasn't seen her since. Because of this, he is very insecure that people are gonna look at him differently. So I think he just accepts this whole tough guy persona just to hide the fact that he doesn't feel like a tough guy and he feels like a woman. He's afraid of getting close to anyone. He doesn't want anyone to know, and he pushes away any sort of intimate interaction he has with any woman before it gets too serious. He carries this around with him throughout the story as some sort of embarrassment or some sort of flaw. A quote that Metcalf says that I feel like really describes how he feels about himself is this: "Yeah, the hills look pretty good from a distance." I feel like this refers to how he looks like a man. He looks all right. And he's trying to be this masculine dude, but when you get closer, he doesn't feel like a man. He feels like a woman. But all of this kind of starts to break away when he sees the dead body of a person he really cares about, and all of this was too much for him, and he just kind of lets everything go, and he starts crying. So a lot of people think, crying isn't a manly thing to do, and for him to cry, he kind of starts to let go of those stereotypes and the traditional manly man thing to do, and I feel like this was the point where he starts to be okay with how his body is. He was able to be intimate with a woman for the first time, and he realized that he lost who he was. He was searching for so long for his old self, but what he really needed wasn't his past, but he just needed to grow and accept who he is now. Throughout the story, it was his mission to figure out who the bad guy was and to try to end the corruption of the office. And I feel like he was trying to do that so he can find a place to fit in. But at the end of the story, he was able to kill the bad guy, but he still wasn't able to change much. He realized he couldn't just sit there and wait for the world around him to change. So when he was sent to the freezer for the second time, he was looking forward to it. Because if he wakes up in a world that he doesn't like or he doesn't fit in, he'll just go back till he finds the other place. I feel like the message at the end of the story is just to not just wait for change, but to go ahead and find that change, to go ahead and find the place you want to be in. Anyways, that's the end. I feel like I kind of went through a lot pretty quick. And I hope I made myself pretty clear with what I was trying to say. So I originally read this book for my detective fiction class. And when I was reading it, I was reading it trying to figure out or trying to like find all the detective fiction stereotypes and tropes. But this time around, I was looking at it with more of a like figuring out what like this means about society and all that kind of junk. So it was pretty fun kind of seeing the book in two different perspectives, and I think it's a really interesting book. So if you haven't read it, definitely read it. It's like less than 300 pages. So yeah. If there's anything about the book or what I said that you want to talk about, please leave a comment. It'd be really awesome to have a discussion. In my last video, I was able to have like a really, really cool conversation with someone about like some of the stuff I said. And it was like super eye-opening because I started kind of questioning or rethinking my opinions and just being able to hear other people's like experience and all that. You just, become a little bit more wiser. So it was really cool, and I hope the same will happen with this video. So yeah, let me know what you think. If there's like something you want me to talk about, please let me know. And I'll get to it. I'm not too sure what I want to talk about for my next video, but I'll figure it out soon. I travel a lot for work. So hopefully before my next little travel flight or whatever, I'll have something to read or watch, and I'll take notes and all that stuff. But yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.